This is Dan Abbott. I'm making a video for the marine science program at Southern Maine Community College showing you the 5 knots, bends, and hitches that you should know in order to run our boat, or any boat. Minimally, there are the knots as well, but these are the ones that are most critical. First couple of terms, that's known as the bitter end. It's the expression right to the bitter end comes from. The rest of the line, wherever it goes, is the standing part of the line. So we're going to start with a bowline. And to start with a bowline, the idea of a bowline is to put a loop or an eye in either the end or the middle of a line. And the size of that eye can be anything you want. I'm going to make a relatively small one here that's going to go off the screen, but it could be as big as you want it to make. You could put the eye around your waist and then still tie a bowline. So the key with a bowline, which is known as the king of knots for a reason, is to make sure you start it correctly and that you go through the steps correctly. So if you're right-handed, I recommend holding the bitter end in your right hand. If you're left-handed, you would reverse it. But if you're right-handed, you start with the bitter end over here, standing end is over here, and the first thing you need to do is to pinch that line and then turn it like you're starting the boat. In other words, do it clockwise. When you're done, you have a loop with the bitter end in front of the standing part. Now the Boy Scouts have this way of remembering it, and it's not bad, where you say, I've got a hole in my tree and the squirrel comes out of the hole. Looks around, decides it wants to go back in the hole, but first it goes behind the tree. Once it gets behind the tree, now it goes back in the hole. Now, when you do that, you end up with this little collar around the standing end. And when you tighten it down, it's like this. That will, under strain, never come loose. Now, that's the nature of a good knot. One that's easy to tie, one that doesn't come loose under strain, and one that's easy to take apart. So it looks like this in the front, looks like that in the back. In the front, it looks like this. We'll do one more, and when you take it apart, the reason it's easy is even though it's been under strain, if you just push that part away, often referred to as breaking the back or breaking the neck, and then this all just comes apart like that. So once more, we've got a loop, and it can be any size you want. In fact, we'll just get the loop right off the screen, so I'll show you at the end just how big it is. Put the bitter end in your right hand if you're right-handed. Standing end is going off to wherever it's going. You reach across and then twist clockwise, so you end up with that loop right there. Coming in from behind, and that's the whole squirrel comes out of his hole in the tree, goes behind the trunk, and then goes back into the hole. And then when you're done, get a hold of that short end and pull it up, and that's what a bowline looks like when you're done tying it. You put that under strain, no matter how much strain you put it under, unless the line breaks, it's never going to come loose. When you want to take it apart, you flip it over, you break the neck of it, it all loosens up, comes apart, just like that. So there's your bowline. I forgot to show you the loop that I made. So we're going to do this quickly, like that. Now, in this particular case, there's your bowline. You can see that the eye that I created is quite large. If you want a smaller eye, you just do it further down the standing part. If you want a larger eye, you go further up the standing part. Now, under strain, it doesn't come loose. It is possible, especially with new line, which is what this is, it is possible, if you don't put it under strain, for it to kind of work itself loose like that. But as long as you're pulling on it, it's not going to come loose. It doesn't usually come loose anyway, but it depends on the line itself. There's one other knot I want you to know, and a knot is something that you tie in a line. It doesn't have anything to do with any other line, and it doesn't have anything to do with any hardware. The other knot is what's called a stopper knot. The simplest stopper knot is not a very good stopper knot. The simplest one is an overhand knot, where you just go over and then through like that, and you've all tied knots like this. Got a couple of problems, but the biggest one is it isn't a very large bunch, and the idea of a stopper knot is you're going to run this through something, like the eye of a fender, or sometimes through an eye that's attached to a dock, and you're going to do that so that when the line runs, it hits that stopper knot and can't pull through. That's not a very good stopper knot. The better stopper knot, instead of an overhand knot, is a figure 8, where you start it the same way, but instead of just going under and through, you go around the back, kind of we got the squirrel going again. Then you come down like that, and when you're done, it makes a figure 8 while you're tying it. Now when you make that up, what you do by pulling it all together like that, you have a very large bundle of knot that allows you to have this line running through something that is bigger than the line but smaller than the knot, and not pull the knot through. So those are our two knots. We have now is what's called a bend. A bend is when you have two lines and you want to put the two lines together. Interestingly enough, the sheet bend, which is what we're going to look at, or a double sheet bend, which is just a somewhat more secure version of it. And if you're in the Coast Guard, that would be known as a Beckett bend or a double Beckett bend. Probably other people use the term Beckett as well. Now, mechanically, it's actually a bowline, and I'll show you in a minute why. But in terms of putting a line and attach it to another line, this works no matter what the difference in the size of the lines are. You've got a line here. You can see there's a slight difference here. The red is a little smaller in diameter, but you could make this go down to a thread. It would still be possible to connect these together securely. You start with a little loop like that, come out from behind, you go around the back of the pair, and then you tuck under that part. When you tuck under that part and pull it all together, it locks it into place like that. And again, no matter how much strain you put on it, it's not going to come loose. You flip it over, it looks a lot like a bowline, because it really is a bowline upside down. Looks like that. But tying it is almost always done this way. It's possible to tie it actually as though you're tying a bowline with two lines. But this is probably the best way to do it, because you start with that loop and then come up through, and if you want it to be even more secure, you come up from behind, go around, and then tuck it under once, go around again, tuck it under twice, so when you're done, you've got two of these tucked under, so it looks like that. And then when you tighten it up, instead of having just one locked in place, you've got two locked in place. Again, you put a strain on that, and this is what the Coast Guard uses to tow another vessel. So you're connecting what's called a bridle to a tow line. We do it with a double Beckett or a double sheet bend, and now you tow a boat, and it puts an enormous strain on this, and it never comes loose as long as you leave enough of the tail end so that it doesn't work itself out. Now, this line, the red line, could be significantly smaller than the white line, and this would still work. That's one of the beauties of this as a bend, is that you can connect two lines that are different sizes together without any trouble. When you want to take it apart, you do the same thing you would have done with the bowline. Don't forget the bowline would look like that. But you just go and break the neck on it, loosen the whole thing up, and then bring it apart like that. Sheet bend, double sheet bend, or double Beckett or Beckett bend, bending a line to another line. Now we have hitches, and I don't have a cleat here. Well, I'm just going to show you, I hope, a little tricky without a rail, but I'm going to kind of simulate a rail here. I'm going to pause this, and then I'll come back with a rail across in front of me, and I'll show you what a clove hitch looks like. And I'll show you a clove hitch with a double overhand knot as well. So what I have here is a simulated railing. And the main purpose of a clove hitch is to put a fender over the side of your boat, and to have it be done with a hitch that is easily adjusted. So you have to imagine that the other end of this line right here has a fender attached to it, and it drops over, and you put the fender wherever you want that fender to go. So in other words, you drop it down until the fender's in the right location. Now, the whips on a fender are usually short, relatively short, so you don't have a lot of line to work with. But you go over from the inside of the boat to the outside of the boat. This then drops down beside the boat with a fender on it. And when it drops down beside the boat, you just adjust it like this until it's exactly where you want it to go. Then you hold it. Then you come around, make a turn. Sorry, that's a little clumsy. Make a turn around the rail, and then pull that across the line that you just started with, standing in. When you do that, it locks this in place. This is not able to move now. And when you're done doing that, now you go around the rail again, and then you come back and go under first loop like this. And now when you're done, it should look like that. The beauty of this is that you can then adjust this by just pulling up on the fender itself and then tightening this up, and you can relocate it if you have to. But you don't normally have to relocate it if you do it correctly, because when you cross the bitter end over the standing end, it locks that in place. And now you've got a knot that looks like that. If you want it more secure, this is not a particularly secure hitch, by the way. I called it a knot, but it's a hitch. But it's great for when you want to do adjustments and you're right there and you can make the adjustments on your fender. If you're going to leave it for a while, what you need to do is give yourself a lot more line here. You'll go around once again, and as you go around, you just cross this over to hold it in place. Now, the point of this is if you do this, it's going to then roll like that. So this locks the whip in place on your fender. And now there's really only one thing you can do with that to make a hitch out of it, and that's to go around again once you've locked it in place, and then come back through like that. So what it should look like when you're done is those two lines kind of side by side. Now, if when you're done with that, you want to put a double hitch on it to make it more secure, you hang it over the outside, you come across like this. The only thing really left to do is to go around again, come up through, and the only thing that makes it a hitch is to go through it again like that. Now then you have to take that end right there and then wrap it around here again, and then at the bottom you're going to tie two half hitches. I didn't leave enough line for that, so I'm just going to adjust this like so. Bring that up like that. So now there's my clove hitch. Looks like that. A couple of very friendly lines lying next to each other. The fender's off on the standing end, but I want to make sure that it doesn't move. So I take the bitter end, go around twice, and make a half hitch. Go around again and make another half hitch. This is a new line, which is a little bit tricky to work with. But when I'm done, all you're doing is with half hitches that you're going around there twice with your half hitch. It's what's really kind of a standard knot. And now because that's tied in like that, it's much less likely for that to change and have the fender go up or down. So the key thing to begin with is to go over from inside the boat, go over the rail to the outside. So you do that. And then the fender, you just put that in whatever position you want it to be in on the boat. And then once you're done, come around like this. Don't let that fall. And when you do come around, you can lock that in place like so. Hang on to it. You're going to go around again, come back up through, go under that line, and then pull it nice and snug, and then snug it right up. And that's what a clove hitch looks like once you've gotten done tying it. It's also possible to put this over the end of something by just making a couple of loops like that, putting them together and dropping it over. So if you have a pier that has an end, but normally that clove hitch is not going to be used on a pier because it's not quite secure enough unless you put a couple of half hitches in as well. So bowline, you have to have a loop like this. You notice I did the two things at once because it's a little bit quicker, but it's the same as reaching over, pinching it, and then turning clockwise. You come out through the hole, go around the back of the tree, go back down in like this, and then you snug the whole thing up. And the loop that you make at the end, or the eye you make at the end, can be any size you want. Put strain on that, it's going to hold. Turn it over when you want to get rid of it. Pull it apart like that, and it all comes apart. A bend, the bend that we didn't do the stopper knot. Stopper knot's really simple. you go over here, and instead of just tying the kind of knot you normally would tie, which is called an overhand knot, you go behind and turn it into a figure 8. Then you have to go down through here. And once you've gone down through here, like that, looks like a figure 8, snug it right up. And once you've snugged it up and tightened it up into this little ball of knot, now you have a stopper knot that's really going to stop things. And then the clove hitch. Well, before we get to the clove hitch, the sheet bend. Sheet bend can either be a single or a double. You're taking two lines and connecting them together. You take the first line and you just make a loop in the bottom. Come up through from behind again. Then go behind the pair like that. And then under the line that came up through. And when you're done, you have a very secure understrain knot. Now, that is a single sheet bend. If you really want to be secure, and again, when the Coast Guard tows, they always put a double becket, it's called, or a double sheet bend. That just means you go around one more time, go under it one more time, and when you're done, you'll have these two lines lying side by side, just like that. And that is a double becket, or a double sheet bend. When you pull on it, it snugs right up. And then the clove hitch, you got a fender, you drape the fender over the outside of your rail, fender's on the other end of that, and you take whatever's left, go around the rail once, and now bring it across so it holds the standing end in place. So you bring it across like that, and there'll be a little weight on the other end that'll hold it in place. And then once you've brought that across like so, you go around one more time around the rail, come up through that loop, snug it all up like so, and when you're done, you'll also have these two lines side by side.